This is Simplify 1918. And please hit the like and subscribe buttons, because it's all the more better, and you'll be able to get the videos when I do them. I know it's been a short minute since I did the last video, but it is what it is. Been busy working and doing a whole lot of stuff. Today, this is a hot topic for a lot of folks. I've been doing a lot of study on it, and it's called plural marriage. Not polygamy, but polygyny, because polygyny is the correct terminology for it, even though polygamy, we've said it for probably the last 100 and some years. Now, Muslims do it, of course. You have some of the other church groups that do it. But before you get your panties in a bunch, let me explain something to you. First and foremost, the culture. Even the culture back then, it was a necessary thing. You say, well, you take a look at the, biblical characters and those that had more than one wife, they had issues and troubles and so on and so forth. Well, there's a lot of marriages today that end up in divorce. Why? Because of issues in the marriage. If single marriage was the best, well, then guess what? It also would work out too. And yes, I have seen several couples that have been married for 50 years. But they're becoming rare. Why? Because my generation has had the issues and the troubles of marriages. And that's where I've gotten divorced twice. Because it just simply was not going to work out between the two of us. I hated myself for doing it, but I also knew that I had to do it and had to go through it. Now, a lot of folks think that the only reason why the guy wants to do it because he's pardon my French, but a horny man, and he just needs to get it going. Well, not always the case. And I'll tell you why. First and foremost, the research that I've done is sometimes they get pushed into it. Like, for instance, I think it was Israel, because he ended up having the 12 tribes from 4 different women, which, by the way, he ended up working 7 years, got the first one, I think it was Rachel, and then the second set of 4 years, ended up getting the second wife, and then worked for another several set of years, for a total of 20 years to get all of his possessions. Now, I say that to say this. Moses had more than one wife. And many other biblical characters did as well. Now, where am I going with this point? I'm going to point this out. First and foremost, women. They never, ever left their father's house until they got married. So if they were 30 years old, guess what? They'd still be underneath their father and in his instructions until she got married. If she never got married, then of course she still would be underneath his authority. Same thing with some of the other places too. Some of the other cultures that are out there. It's not just the biblical culture, but there's a lot of cultures out there that do the same thing. And I think that is a very, very good and biblical thing. Now, for the men, what they would do is they'd get out when they were an adult. They'd go out, procure, their funding, procure the land, procure the house, and set everything up. And by the time they did that, they were in their late 20s and early 30s, which in turn they ended up marrying these younger gals, which were, the age is probably about 14, 15 and on up. Now you say, ugh, that's horrible, that's wrong. Well, here's the thing. In the scriptures, and on top of that, when you take a look at it, even all the way up until the 70s, there was no minimum requirement for age. Now, there's the good and the bad with that. Do I recommend and say, do I think it's, okay for a man to go out and sleep with a woman that's young like that? No. Just because in today's realm it's illegal, for one, and two, their mentality's not there, and 3, there's a whole bunch of other can of worms to go with that one. However, back then, many things would happen. Like here's another one. As the guy procured the land and procured the money and procured the way, and he got married to her, what happens if she's no longer able? Well, what if she cannot produce babies? Is he supposed to be stuck with her, be able to get divorced? Well, if God hates divorce, then why doesn't he just marry another woman and have procure women through her? Now you say, well, what? You just started talking about having kids. Well, it's not just about procuring kids. Here's another aspect. Even in today's realm, think of this. If it was legal, you could have 1 or 2 wives that are out there working while there's another wife at the house, and she'll be taking care of the kids and taking care of the house, while you're also out there going and procuring the money as well, which means you all 3 or 4 can work together, or 5, and procure a lot of funds to be able to procure a good lifestyle. Sure, you might have to get a big house, but guess what? If you're all working to pay for that house, it's a win-win-win situation. Or you can go the other way. If a guy's a multi-millionaire or billionaire and he can afford the 2, 3, 4, 5 houses, why not? I mean, we got, the LGBTQRS all the way through the Z alphabet soup out there. So why not? I'll tell you why they don't want it. It's because of feminism. Feminism hates the idea of a man having multiple wives. Why? Because the man would be the head of the household, which, by the way, it is biblical for the man to be the head of the household and in charge. The second thing is, the husband is always going to be held accountable for what's going on in the family. Now, does that mean the wife can't, help and do things? Of course not. Does that mean he has to be strict and tell her, well, you do this or do that, or No, I'm not talking about, having him beat his wife or be abusive and all that crap. Far from it. In fact, the scriptures in 2 Corinthians talks about that a man should love his wife. Now, it doesn't say that she should love her husband. No. It says she should respect her husband and his authority, and let him be the head of the house as Christ is above and the head of the church. You may hate me for it, but them are God's words, not mine. So you have to take that one up to God. So like I said, there's many, many benefactors to having multiple wives. Versus one. Now, I said a man should have like 5, 6, 10, 100,000 wives. No. There's, there should be a reasonable limit with that. Just in the fact of natural limits. But to each their own, and yeah, there are some people out there, like I know Pastor Dowell, he's only got one wife, and he even says it. It's biblical to have more than one, and it may be beneficial. However, he doesn't want to have more than one wife. And if you find one good wife, that's great. And that's excellent. And a good thing, because that's what God created in the first place. One man, one woman. And it's interesting on how people think of it being only and only that. And we've come across that subject in, certain places that I've gone to. In fact, the last congregation that I currently go to, The leadership concurs that that there's nothing against it in the Torah. However, the congregation feels that it's not necessarily beneficial. So, that's being done. Yeah, I know I'm a little tired. But, as I was saying, there's good, there's the bad, and the ugly. Multiple marriages, if all the people have their mindset right, it can work. If one person doesn't have their head right, it ain't gonna work. Which is pretty interesting. And with today's generation, I just put it this way. I know there's a lot of Filipinas and there's a lot of, girls out there that need a good man in their life. And I know quite a few of them that need that. But the problem is we don't have a whole lot of alpha males because they're getting turned into betas. Which, that's a whole nother ball game and another subject to talk. So that's another reason a lot of women are hitting the wall. And like I said, all they need is that good man in their life. Well, how are they going to have a good man when there's so few good men and a lot of women? Like Australia, there's one man per 5 women. Which means if they were to open it up to polygyny, guess what? The guy could marry 5 women. If they were to work it out, instead of being all, off the inside of feminism, saying, well, we're just equal, if not better. I don't play that game. I play that each one of us has a role. Like women, they're usually better in the maternal role. Which means, I don't mean like staying home barefoot, pregnant. I mean staying home and taking care of the kids. Because what's the point of going to work if you ain't making enough money to, pay for a babysitter? That stuff has gotten way expensive, ridiculously expensive. That's why eventually my stepmom, when she was married to my dad, eventually she ended up going back to work. Well, she ended up going back to work and then she quit working. Why? Because they figured out that the amount of money that she was making from it was not enough to set off the difference of having her take care of my brother David and the house and all that. So it just coincided and it worked that way. So that is another benefit. So if you do need more income, guess what? You have 2 people working while another one stays home. Your paid babysitter is the babysitter that you're married to. Now you got 2 incomes coming to the house, and you got a 3rd person there working and cleaning and doing all that fun stuff. Now I'm not saying it as a slave, I'm saying as in working it as a team. There's a big difference. Because that 3rd person can help lighten the load while the other 2 are out procuring funds. Why not? Working together. That's the way that I look at it. But anyways, that's 14 minutes and some odd seconds of me chit-chatting on polygyny and what I think how a family should be utilized. Semper Fi 1918 out.